isn't a soft topic. It's actually a strategy. So we are in International Women's Day month, and this year theme, Balancing the Scale, is a powerful one for me. Because when we talk about women leadership, we often talk about confidence, visibility, opportunity, all important, of course. But if we are honest, many women are still being asked to lead in a system that were never designed with them in mind. A system that quietly rewards outwork, constant availability, and prove it again performance. So when I say balancing the scale, I'm not talking about lowering standards, of course. I'm talking about rebalancing what we value, not just in hours, but outcomes, not just resilience, but recovery, not just ambition, but sustainability. So in my lived experience, that twice as hard was actually a reality. I come up in automotive, a very male-dominated space, where you learn quickly that competence is always assumed. For a long time, I felt I had to work twice as hard as being seen as half as credible. I over-prepared, I overstayed, I over-carried. And here's the part that people don't always say it out loud. When you are a woman in a room, where you are that expectation, you don't just represent yourself. You feel like you represent all women. And so you don't want to make that mistakes, right? Because you don't want to be too much, too direct, too emotional, or too ambitious. So, and you also don't want to be not enough or not technical enough, not enough, say thought enough or not business mind enough. That constant self-monitoring has a cost. And sounds quite funny, but I usually call in this, that is very tiring, and I call it the leadership tax. And if we want more women to stay, grow, and lead in automotive, in trades, in corporate entrepreneurship, we have to talk about that tax. We have to start acknowledging that tax. So the core idea, it's actually implementing a wellness wisdom in any leadership form that we actually carry on. So when I say wellness wisdom, I'm not talking about bubble bath. I'm talking about the practical, so that practical intelligence of knowing what your nervous system is doing under pressure and what your body is signaling before burnout hits, how your energy, attention sort of presented, and decision-making changes when you are overloaded, and how to build leadership habits and business systems that don't require you to sacrifice your health to succeed. Because leadership, it's not just about what you do. Leadership is actually more than that. And leadership is what you can sustain. And entrepreneurship is not just the ability to start, it's actually the ability to keep going without breaking yourself into the process. So what I'm going to cover today is actually something very practical that I want you to take away. I want to give you 3 things. Whether you are a woman leading, a man leading, a business owner, a manager, or someone supporting leaders, I want to give you a new definition of high performance, one that includes well-being as a business input and not just a personal hobby. 3 practical leadership shifts that integrates wellness wisdom into how you lead and how you can build. And a balancing the scale action plan, as small specific changes you can implement immediately. And I will keep it grounded in real business life, not theory. So first, I want to just start starting from redefine high performance. And here's the question I ask leaders all the time, and I want to ask you. If your business model requires you to be exhausted to be successful, is it actually a good business model? Because across all industry, we are normalized a version of leadership that looks like constant urgency, constant availability, and constant proving. But urgency is not the same as importance, and being busy is not the same as being effective. Wellness wisdom brings us back to the basics. You need to focus on the clarity to reduce your stress, predictability, reduce the friction, and the recovery improves decision making. That's not just motivational, guys. This is operational. So if we're moving into, the transition to the first leadership shift, so let's get practical. The first leadership shift is lead your energy like it's your business assets. And sometimes we sort of forget this because it is, isn't it? And I always started with the truth that many women know in their bones. When you are working twice as hard to be taken seriously, you can't afford to waste energy on unnecessary friction. Later, I will break down exactly what it looks like to lead energy strategically in meetings, in decision making, and in the way you design your week. So when we're saying to use that energy as a business asset, I want to make it practical. Most leaders manage time. High performing leaders manages energy. And we forgot this most of the time. So, and women often become expert at spending energy in an invisible way. So, yeah, I will cover that as well, Edra. So, we often scan in that room, we're adjusting the tone, we want to prove that credibility. And we're carrying that emotional labor, doing the extra. So, there is no reason to question competence. That's not a personal weakness. This is a system reality. So, here are 3 ways to lead energy strategically without lowering your standards. So, let's start it with one focus, right? So the energy budget. And sometimes we forget that energy, it's actually your budget in leadership and in work. So before you say yes to something, ask yourself this: what would this cost me in energy? What will it give me in return in value? And is there a low cost way to get the same outcome? This is wellness wisdom. In business language, it's return on energy. So protect your decision-making window. In my experience, the faster way to lose leadership clarity is to make high-stakes decisions when you are depleted. So pick a daily window where you do your most important thinking and protect it like if you would have protected a key client meeting or your family member. So that might be like saying, for example, for me, works really well. First 90 minutes of the day, I'll just actually have a really good focus on what the day looks like, or a post-lunch reset window, or just simply say no meetings after 3 p.m. rules, and just really put those posts. The point isn't the exact time. The point is you stop donating your best brain to everyone else. Just trying to get this slide in a way that actually makes sense to you. Sorry. So this is something else that we sometimes forget about the recovery mode, because when recovery isn't a word to finishing, recovery is what makes finishing possible. If your week is wall to wall, your nervous system never comes down. And when your nervous system stays activated, you don't just feel stressed, but you become reactive. So build micro recovery into the rhythm. That could be like 5 minutes between meeting, or 10 minutes walk before or after, a really strong conversation, for example. Or simply just turn your phone off and use this as a transition between work and home, so you don't actually feel that pressure. These are really small, change, but they change the quality of your leadership. So redesign leadership from prove it to build it. It's actually another really strong strategy. This is where we connect directly to the balancing the scale. A lot of women have been taught that leadership is about proving that you're competent, proving that you're tough, proving that you can handle it. But the most sustainable leaders I have worked with don't just prove it, they want to build things. They build systems that make performance repeatable. And here's the shift: stop relying on personal endurance as the strategy. Start relying on design. Practical example of leadership by design could be, for example, meeting with agendas and outcomes, not just updates. Sometime and often we're going into meetings and it's all about what we talk about in the meeting before and what we've got to put it on the agenda for the meeting after. So clear roles and decision rights. So be really specific about what you actually tell your team. So how can leaders measure sustainability signal in their team? This is actually a very important question, Deborah. Thank you for raising it. And you will see this on my action plan that I would like to give you guys. So it's really simple sometimes, and we forget how it can work in a practical way. So, and this is, again, write that expectation down so people aren't guessing. People actually know exactly what you're expecting from them. And that feedback that is specific and timely, not just vague or delayed, and expecting that people doing what you're having in progress. This is well-being work, because clarity reduces stress. and it's performance work, because clarity reduces rework, because sometimes we will need to redo that task again. So to break it down, and this goes back into that measurable sustainability that you asked, Deborah. So when we actually are constantly into that mode, if well-being staying in a category of nice idea, it will always lose that urgency. Yeah. So how we measure that, as you said it, Deborah, not in a fluffy way, in a leadership way. So for me, there is 3 measurable toolkit that you could use. And I'm tending to do this like in a regular basis. So on a weekly basis, I actually do the capacity checks in. For example, I started asking myself, what's on my plate for this week? What's the pinch point? And what support will change the outcome? In a monthly basis, you can even keep in mind the friction audits. So where are we losing time to confusion? What keeps breaking? What is unclear for my team or for myself? And then you're going into, and this is, I'll really suggest you to keep in mind on a regular basis, the sustainability signal. So start to see how, for example, the sick days, if they are increasing, if it's a pattern, if the turnover risk is actually constant, and if there is many mistakes by you, by your team, and often if there is conflict, because when there is conflict, that means that there is a culture that needs to be fixed. And one important thing, when people say to you, I'm fine, and that becomes the default answer. There are not personal problems. This is actually leadership data. Well, energy management, it is very important today because society is already ask you too much, more than what you can give, right? So on top of everything that you need to manage, if you don't have a really good balance in your energy, you don't know exactly how big is your envelope and how full it is. How can you give to others? How can you be a good leader and just sustain the emotional loads of other people? Because that's what a leader does as well. We not only have to measure our energy, but we need to really balance the energy of all team. And that is actually a very tricky problem. So as I was saying, this is not just a personal problem. That's a leadership data across the globe. So a note to the men in the room, if you are a man listening, here's the invitation. You don't need to fully understand what it feels like to be the only women in a room. But you can help balance that scale by doing 3 things consistently. Assume competence, share the load, especially those invisible loads that we tend not to disclose, and design clarity into the way that work gets done. That's not charity, that's a good leadership. So now that we have got the 3 shifts, which was, remember, the lead energy like a business asset, so you recognize how much energy you have to put it into your work, redesign leadership from prove it to build it, and make well-being measurable. So I'm going to give you a simple action plan that you can actually use in the next 7 days to start balancing the scale and just see if your own leadership and your own business is actually, up to that sort of level, or it needs a little bit of improvement. Because sometimes, it's all about adjusting and getting to what it actually works for you, not for the company itself. So I want to give you something very simple and usable, because inspiration is great, but implementation sometimes is what it changes lives. So I just put it together, a 7-day action plan that you can take into your leadership, your team, or your business, and sometimes even at home, and just see if you can actually improve your day-to-day and fill up the envelope. So day 1, choose your definition of success. Write down your current definition of success. Then ask yourself, does this definition require overwork to be true? Does it reward visibility over value? And does it leave space for health, family, recover, and creativity? Because that's another crucial point. We need to always balance the different worlds that we live in. So balancing the scale starts with defining what winning looks like for you. In day 2, remove one unnecessary friction point. So pick one friction point that drains your energy every week. That, for example, could be meeting with not agenda, unclear hands-over, and last meeting changes, decision that bounce around without an owner. Everybody just says something just for the sake of it, but In a matter of fact, we need to have that agenda and stick to schedule, because as a leader, you just managing multiple heads, multiple minds. So fix one, not 10. Just pick one, and that's leadership. So in day 3, create one boundaries that protect your best brain. Choose one boundary that protects your decision making. That, for example, could be not meeting before 10 a.m. twice a week. I actually introduced this one a few years ago, and it's a life-changing, because you don't feel that pressure of every week the same things all over again. And it gives you that little bit of time for yourself to put your thoughts together. A 30-minute buffer after a difficult call, for example, could be another one. Or not urgent messages after a set time unless it's truly urgent. If you are a leader, your clarity is your business asset, so keep that in mind. Day 4, have one capacity conversation. Ask one person or yourself 3 questions. What's on your plate right now? What's the pinch point? What support will change the outcome? This is how well-being become operational. Day 5, upgrading one system for fairness. If we were serious about empowering women, we have to be serious about fairness in the system. So pick one. It could be in recruitment, to have that clear criteria and structured interview, that you actually take in mind the invisible barriers that women carry day to day. Onboarding, so some bridging expectation and predictable checks in. On the performance levels, so just to check those outcomes over optics. And meetings again. I can't really stress enough, when we have those meetings, they are dreadful. So if everything goes over more than 15 minutes, something is seriously wrong. So we need to really concise that and just make more notes, decision making, and also having a more really structured schedule for that. So fair system, balance the scale. That's another thing to keep in mind. So on day 6, build the recovery into the rhythm. Schedule recovery like it's part of the job, because in effect it is, like we often forget about our own well-being. So, started taking your walk, reset between meetings, a proper lunch. We always forget. I don't know how many of you forget about it, but when you are in a rut and you want to finish something, we forgot about our really, primary things that we should have focused on it. Even a proper lunch becomes a challenge. A device-free transition at the ending of the day. Turn off your phone. I actually learned this myself too late, but I usually now turn my phone off at 5 and tending not to return it on at 8 a.m. in the morning. So this is actually leadership maintenance. It's not a weaknesses. So we need to focus in on maintaining that well-being as well. Day 7, make one commitment and make it visible. Tell someone about it. What are you intending to do? Write it down yourself on post notes. Put it in your calendar. If you lead a team, name it aloud. They need to be part of your journey. We are going to run meetings with agendas from now on. We are going to measure outcomes, not hours. We are going to stop rewarding burnout because we really care about ourselves. That's our cultural shift. So I will finish with this today, and I hope that you got something, that you can take away with you. In automotive, I learned how quickly people would call a woman tough when she's coping, and how rarely they ask what is costing her. And I also learned something hopeful. When you change the system, even slightly, you don't just help women, you help everyone. Clear expectation help everyone. Fair performance measures help everyone. Recovery helps everyone. And when a women don't have to spend energy proving they belong, they can spend it building what they actually came to build. So that's empowering, that's leadership, that's balancing the scale. So my invitation to you this International Women's Day month is simple. Don't just celebrate women. Design for women, design for well-being, design for sustainability. What I've learned the hard way, if leadership requires you to be exhausted to be respected, the system is not high performing. It's just high cost. And that's why I'm so passionate about balancing the scale, not as a slogan, but as a leadership practice. Because when we rebalance what we value, we don't just lower standards. We lift the quality of leadership. We stop rewarding burnout if it's commitment. We stop confusing urgency when it's important. We stop building workplaces where the only way to succeed is to sacrifice your health, your family, or your sense of self. So wellness wisdom isn't a side conversation. It needs to be an operational conversation. It's the leader who can stay steady in conflict. It's the manager who creates clarity so people aren't guessing. It's the business owner who designs systems so performance is repeatable and not dependable on someone running on adrenaline. And if you are a man in this room, I want to say this clearly. You don't need to feel accused to be included. You can be part of balancing the scale in a simple, powerful way. Assume competence, share the invisible load, back fair system, and model recovery, because when leaders model it, teams don't feel like they have to earn it. And if you are a woman in this room, especially if you have spent years proving, adapting, and caring more than what you actually have to share, I want you to hear this. You were never asked for special treatment. You were asking for a fair opportunity, for a clear standard, for respect that isn't conditional. Balancing the scale means we design workplace where women don't have to spend their energy proving they belong, so they can spend it building, leading, and creating, and changing what is possible. So my invitation to you as we leave here today is to make this practical. Pick one system you can improve, one expectation you can clarify, one boundaries you can protect, one conversation you can have earlier, one decision you can make that says, we will not reward burnout here. Because culture doesn't change with one big speech. It changes with hundreds more leadership choices repeated. So, and that's how we build businesses, industry, and community that last. Not by caring more, but by design better. Because the future of leadership just, isn't who can carry the most. It's actually who can build what lasts for everybody and not just for ourselves. So I hope you got something to take away today, and that you can actually put it into practice. If there is any question, I don't know if there is time, but otherwise you can reach me out on my email address and I'm happy to connect with you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Roy, I don't know if I got time to answer some of the question that I got. So Matthew says, which step in a 7-day action plan creates the big impact for leaders? That's a good question. And again, I will concentrate it into, that energy, be clear, be really powerful into, what you expect. For me, for example, one of the best point that I always keep in mind is that recovery, and make that recovery possible. As I was saying, we often forget about it, that we are human. We also parents, carers, friends, lovers. We are in relationship, and that's all extra load. So we need to really creating that time during the day where we can take those walks, we can take the proper lunch, we can actually reset and refuel our energy. So to answer your question, Matthew, probably the recovery stage is one of my powerful ones. What advice would you give to women leading in a male-dominated industry? You belong there. You're there for a reason, not by accident. And unfortunately, I've got to say, we are still probably 1% of women leading in those male-dominated industry. And sometimes we're not taken seriously, not because, again, there is not chance or possibility for us, but most of it because the system was not created with us in mind. So I always say, we don't want to fit in. We want to belong to a place. So to do that, we need to really have a cultural change in any workplace or boardroom, Natalie. So it's a really tough question that I feel every day still after 30 years. So Dr. Putri, from your experience, what is the first step to turning well-being into a leadership strategy? Again, taking care of yourself. Start to learn how to take care of yourself. And remember, as we were saying as the first things, you are the best business assets. So if you not have 100% battery capacity and you keep it's like when you got an iPhone and you keep recharging it for a few minutes here and there in the car or, between meetings, you're not going to really recharge that battery 100%. So you keep chasing something. And the same is with us. So we need to really treat in our well-being as a number one priority. So we need those recharge time and thinking that we're not just there to produce, but we're also there to build something that it lasts. So I want to thank everybody for time today. I hope that you got something to take away with you and it was a little bit insightful. So as I leave you, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful session. We truly appreciate your contribution to the event.
Thank you, Melinda. Always a pleasure to be part of you guys.
I hope whoever asked the questions, they got the answers. And thank you for being a part of the event. Please join the next sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.